Hello, I'm Deborah Sword. Normally, Tyson and I have at least a general idea of what our topic is going to be about for each episode. This time, Tyson spontaneously said he had a question. Oh, and by the way, let's record it. Sure, no preparation, no warning, no time to think. What could go wrong? Normally, we have disclaimers and definitions ready for clarification. Today, it's raw footage, which is fun and dangerous. The discussion does need qualifiers. First, nothing in what we discuss applies to abusive relationships or to relationships with power imbalance where one party controls the other. Second, communication in relationships of any kind is constant, whether it's at work, socially, your volunteer life, at home, transactions such as retail, parenting, and so on. You need constant attention to your communication. So, in my response to Tyson's question, I suggest that my response to conflict in my relationships is to focus on the quality of the relationship rather than on who's wrong or who's more controlling or where to leave shoes. In fact, the quality of the relationship is where I try to focus, even in casual conversation. We don't need to wait for conflict to bring out the user instructions and haul out our conflict competence. Don't let your conflict competencies dust and rust. Use them often. Third, Tyson asks why conflicts tend to enlarge and spiral from whatever topic started the conflict into a fight over who's wrong or blameworthy. Part of the reason returns to our earlier episodes on conflict patterns. If our pattern is to avoid difficult topics, it's easier and more comfortable to be reactive and defensive. So here's the spontaneous episode. I'm Deborah Sword with Tyson Bankert, my friend and co-host, who jumps right into it.
But Deborah, you mentioned a scenario a couple of weeks ago, a few episodes, where you were saying that, and I know you were joking, but I really think this is a great um, maybe exercise to kind of reflect on this. You were saying that you and your family members can look outside a window and argue about the weather, right? And I think that is so true to so many of our conflicts, is that we often will say it's raining or it's too sunny or it looks warmer or it looks colder than it is, or the grass isn't as green as one person might perceive it to be. And so you can have that conversation within like the boundary of what's happening outside, what is the weather, and having everyone look outside. And I think the interpretation oftentimes is that person is wrong. Oh, that person always looks at, like, always thinks it's warmer outside than it really is. Or she doesn't actually know how green the grass can be. Or they don't know that have a degree in meteorology or whatever it is, right? And I think like that becomes the conflict, not actually what people are actually seeing. So I'm just wondering if what that, how do you, how does one um talk about those things rather than the disagreement about what the weather looks like? Because that's ultimately where the conflict is coming from. And yet we kind of want to just think, oh, it's just this one-time experience.
That is a really good point because what you're saying, if I interpret it correctly, is it's not about the weather. It's whether somebody is an optimist or a pessimist. It's whether
Yeah.
somebody is negative in their thinking or somebody is a positive thinker. And so there is a time and a place, and I always recommend getting to the real issue. So there's two parts to it. One is, can we stop it from spiraling into something bigger when it doesn't need to be bigger? Like my partner having his shoes in the middle of the floor is not a deal breaker for the relationship. But some things are, and they need to be talked about. So how would I do that? By focusing on the quality of the relationship is one way.
Mm.
So if I say your shoes are always in the middle of the floor, first of all, it's a problem with my using the word always with
Right.
that tone of voice, because that does sound like nagging. It does sound like controlling. I might instead say, your shoes are a trip hazard. Would you mind moving them? Or could you please leave your shoes at the mat at the door instead of walking into the house wearing them? So there are ways to say it, but I would also look at what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to achieve a quality of the relationship. So I would say, let's talk about how we talk to each other. That's the
Right.
real issue. If I'm speaking in a way that he interprets as controlling and nagging, I need to also check in with my behavior. I need to accept my contribution to how he sees what I just asked.
So it makes me reflect though on the idea of when someone says, and the really easy sentence, which is you always do this, you always put your shoes here. And what I appreciate what you're saying is there the emotional intelligence that might be required to reframe that as, hey, when you put this here, it's a tripping hazard. Can you move it? Right? It has a qualifiers. It also has a little bit of empathy building. There's things there that are really helpful. But why don't we then do that? Like, why do we always go to like the really easy but like unproductive way of saying something, and then we get into this conflict? Like, why can't it just be do we think that the other person should be considering us more and just should know that it's a trip? Like why do we then, because we don't do that with people that we maybe don't know, right? Like we usually reserve these things for the people that we are in strong relationships with. Because the always doesn't make sense because we don't even know the person, or we don't even know how they show up.
Exactly. And if the shoes really bother me, I could just move them. It's
Right? Yeah.
I want a behavior change from somebody who doesn't see the behavior as a problem. So the reason we call it conflict owner's manual, I need to own my expectations. I need to own the language I use, and I need to own how much I'm prepared to invest in the relationship. And if it will make me happy to just move his shoes, I can do that too.
Mm.
So
So,
why do we do it? Because we have expectations and other people get comfortable. They just get comfortable. He likes to leave his shoes there. He likes to cover
mm,
every surface. The things that don't bother him and bother me, I need to take care of myself. If it bothers me that he does X, I need to take care of X, not try to change him.
right, right. Well, I guess we hope you'll subscribe, like, share, and come back to listen to more Conflict Owners Manual episodes.
Because we could all own our conflict. So please like and share and let us know of a time that you owned your conflict. Thanks for listening.